Now, I know exactly what you guys are thinking. Arza, why are you dressed like a gay clown? And it's a pretty easy answer. It's because I'm talking about the biggest gay clown in all of media. Russell T Davies, the person who saved Doctor Who and then condemned it to the worst of all queer hells, has gone and done it again! He's opened his mouth at another award show. This man has done more speeches fear-mongering queer people into thinking that we're about to be thrown into concentration camps than he's actually done anything of real value. He's probably spent more time complaining about what Donald Trump or somebody else is doing than actually bothering to fix anything or work on improving anything whatsoever. With the new season of Doctor Who making an absolute mockery out of such a British institution and making all gay people somehow look bad, he's an absolute joke and a failure at his key job, and he's done it once more where he's gone out and he's run his mouth again. This time fear-mongering once more, saying that the UK always copies what the US does and that the US is going to ban gay marriage, which means the UK is going to ban it, and we're one step closer to living in the hellscape laid out by V for Vendetta. Or at least, that's what this guy's fanfiction is. I know for a fact he has his boyfriend always play out the little role of the extremist Christian because it gets him hard. He likes it when his boyfriend wears the little priest outfit so he can pretend to be an altar boy. And then of course all this fear-mongering has culminated into, well, some actual action that might be punishing gay people, or should I say, the queers who have abused the moral currency that the rest of society gave us. The apology that we were given has been completely thrown out the window, and now gay marriage is at risk, or so it would seem. In reality, one random person's appealing to the Supreme Court to overturn a ruling in favor of gay marriage, and so that she could be unharmed and be given retribution for the legal damages she faced for refusing to give out marriage licenses. Now, I've got a lot of thoughts on this issue, so we'll be getting there promptly, and stay tuned. But before we go any further, like, subscribe, and let's get into this. So first and foremost, the joke who's going to be most responsible if we ever do lose the right to gay marriage. And let's be very transparent about something. If the right to gay marriage is stripped away, it will not be because of conservatives. It will not be because of Nazis or backslide into fascism. No, it will be because of the abuse from the queer community. People out here screaming, berating, and denigrating you for not affirming, for not caring, and for not supporting. It is these people who are screaming at you for misgendering them when they're in the wrong bathroom. People who look more masculine than me going into the women's room and getting mad when somebody calls me sir. That's the ultimate issue. It's people like that who have pushed society so far and so aggressively that they really have no choice but to possibly get rid of this so that they can regain some amount of sanity. It won't be conservatives' fault. No, it'll be our own community's fault when we lose our access to marriage. But of course, Russell T Davies doesn't know that because he's an idiot. As this time around, Russell T Davies is calling for the LGBT community to revolt in terror and anger and action. In an interview with Big Issue, Davies said, when Queer as Folk came out in 1999, if you'd said, what will gay rights look like in 2025, we'd have said, oh, it will be all marvelous. It'll be sunshine and skipping down the street, hand in hand, gays, queers, lesbians, everyone. And look at where we are. Things got better, but now things are rapidly and urgently getting worse. Well, Russell T Davies, we had that. And we, in large part, still do. You mean to tell me you can't go to California and skip down holding your boyfriend's hand? No one's gonna care. The only problem is when you skip and fall, you'll probably cause the next big tsunami. And the problem is, we allow for too many people to take advantage of too many things. When the rate of pedophilia is skyrocketing through the roof, you can't help but wonder, maybe we did something wrong. Maybe there's a reason that people are pushing back a little bit. Maybe there's a reason that temperance is always such a valid trait. When we failed to prevent the predators from sneaking in, when we let the wolves in with the sheep, you're just shocked we're causing some kind of problem for the community? But Russell continues, what happens in America always happens here, the UK, and as we look down on the barrel of a reform government, we, the gay community, queer community, should be revolting in terror and anger and action, he declared. They're out to get us. The President of America is literally out to get us. He is discounting us. He should be happier with the invisible and gone, defunded, completely invisible, if not biologically altered, to become as straight as him. Russell T Davies, I understand that you want the gay version of The Handmaid's Tale, but there are better ways to go about fulfilling your fetish. Donald Trump has always been an open advocate for gay marriage. He's always had that. Even if you go back and watch episodes of The Apprentice, where he actively praised a member of his staff who was gay, equating sexuality to that of restaurants with menus. You have a menu because some people like this thing and some people like that thing, and everyone gets something that they like. Donald Trump has always been in support of the community, and to say otherwise is, well, laughably obtuse. Furthermore, if you're concerned about losing gay rights in England, your concern shouldn't be with American conservatives, but instead the Muslims you allowed to infiltrate through the front door, the people you invited through multiple boats and unchecked docks. Those are the people who think that you are wrong, ugly, gross, and unsanitary. Those are the ones who will gleefully throw you off the nearest roof, and in England, unlike in the Middle East, we have quite tall roofs. Or if you're afraid of being forcibly turned straight, the only way to do that, and Muslims do support this, is through forced feminization. A Muslim will gladly castrate a man and turn him into a woman so that he's no longer gay. After all, the Prophet Muhammad had no issues cross-dressing, as he supposedly only managed to get visions from Allah when he wore the dresses of his 9-year-old wife. And you know what? Call me controversial, call me conservative, you already will. Gay people we should be invisible. I'm bisexual. My sexuality should be invisible. If you are noticing my sexuality, I am doing something wrong. If I'm going out there and screaming from the rooftops, look at how rainbow bright I am, and please celebrate and worship at the altar of my queerness, I'm doing something wrong. I'm calling attention and putting a target on myself. And that's how you get people to hate us. When you demand they see us, you make them resent us. And that is exactly what happens in the next article that I will be reading. But Davies then reiterated, I hope they're prepared to fight. That younger generation that has no idea how they got here. And neither should they. They're busy living their lives. I didn't spend much of my youth looking back at World War II, but I do think, are you prepared to fight? Because the fight is coming. And yes, Davies, I am prepared to fight. I'm prepared to fight if my rights get violated because of some stupid queer running his mouth and ruining it for everybody. I'm prepared to stand up and say the unpopular stance. After all, here I am, this is my fight, and this is not the full extent that I'll take it to, but this is a pretty big stop. And what have you done, aside from appealing to your massive ego, pretending that queer as folk is the invention of gay rights in general? You seem to think that you are the sole reason that gay people could ever marry, and you think you are the most important person in this world, when you're nothing more than a C-rate drag. But of course, this isn't the first time he's done this. Like I said, back in 2024, during an appearance at the BAFTAs, A Life in a Picture, Russel T. Davies said, 10 years ago, or even when we did Queer as Folk 25 years ago, we were on the up. It was like, good times are here. Now they're absolutely not. That wave coming from America, where they're trying to have legislation banning drag queens, that's absolutely going to come here. Davies! That doesn't exist. Nobody is trying to ban drag queens, you obstinate fool. They are trying to prevent pedophiles from reading books to children. They're trying to prevent burlesque performances, because let's be very clear, drag is an innately sexual performance. Drag is sexual. And I'm saying that as someone whose favorite movie is The Birdcage, starring Robin Williams, Nathan Lane. Nathan Lane is a national treasure. But it is objectively not that they're trying to ban drag queens. They're trying to ban drag queens from showing their egregiously large artificial bosoms into the faces of children and encouraging kids to dress them in drag as well. That's what legislation is looking to put in place. They're trying to limit sexual exposure to children. And only the most pedophilic of people could oppose that. But he continues, I think our rights are paper thin. He continued, the world is becoming unsafe, so I will always keep writing about that. I will always keep writing about male gayness if people will have me. And we don't want you. We won't have you. There's always going to be space to write about male gayness, sure, but only to, the about 14% of the population that actually cares about it. 7% for the gays. Not all of them care about it, though. And then a little bit for the women who fetishize that, too. It's not something that's in huge demand, and our rights aren't paper thin. They're only as thin as the people who are making it justified to be taken away. The only time our rights are at any kind of risk is when a queer is standing up on a roof screaming about how queer they are and how they want to show their ding-dongs to all the children so they can turn the children gay. They want to express their not-so-secret gay agenda,
my, not-at-all-secret gay agenda,
and spread it to as far and wide. When you create an actual environment justified on fear, not predicated on fear, you are opening the door for our rights to become and be made paper thin. This is a problem of your causing, not one that is naturally present. But Davies had also told Deadline that it was his job to push queerness as much as possible. I know as a part of a rising tide of gay, lesbian, and other writers, all of us contributing to the soaps and chipping into primetime dramas, all of us slowly and then rapidly increasing the visibility of queer characters on screen, and I'm lucky that I was one that burst through and got that on screen. And yes, there is value in showing natural and healthy gay representation. Watching a few episodes of Will and Grace is known to reduce disdain towards the LGBT community and increase acceptance. But when you're forcing it down the throat, pushing the most harmful of stereotypes about us, all of a sudden that effect disappears. When you're constantly propagandizing instead of telling a story, People don't like being told what to think, and when they think they know what you're trying to do, they will become resistant to it. And you are offering people and begging people to be resistant, so you can be the perpetual victim and perpetual revolutionary you so desperately want to be. But he continued, I'm always aware, especially as time marches on, that I carry this legacy of being white, male, and gay. And it's my job to look beyond that because there's no point in sitting still. I have to look at myself and be certain that I've moved on. I look to society and try to listen to what's going on and open gateways. Then Davies declared, when you become a senior figure in television, it's your job to open doors and let the next people through, to let the trans and queer stories through, and to become familiar with this language myself instead of getting settled into middle age. Well, because you work at the BBC, I'm sure you keep that door open, just not to adults. Your obstinance and insistence that you need to push these stories through when it's applied to such a small percentage of the population is laughable and honestly both deranged and dangerous. You are actively begging for a chance to evangelicize your queerness into the world and spread it to places where it simply doesn't belong, and where by spreading it you risk putting a target on all of our backs. And well, that target did come. As recently, some people in Kentucky are looking to overturn some things. Somebody who back in 2015 was fired and fined a pretty large amount of money for refusing to officiate gay marriages at the county clerk's office is causing a bit of a stir, and now the situation you guys are fearmongering about might finally come to, so let's go ahead and get into that. Coming from the Independent, Supreme Court asked to hear a case that could upend same-sex marriage and absolve Kentucky clerk who refused to issue a license. The former county clerk says she should have been protected by the First Amendment, and that landmark 2015 ruling establishes same-sex marriage rights was wrongly decided. Now I've got some mixed feelings about this case. So, a former county clerk in Kentucky who was briefly jailed for refusing to issue same-sex marriage license upon religious grounds is asking the Supreme Court to consider her appeal, arguing in part that the High Court's landmark 2015 decision to recognize gay marriage rights was wrongly decided. Kim Davis, it's funny how both people's last name is Davis here, who served as Rowan County Clerk until 2018, appealed to the Supreme Court late last month, challenging lower federal court ruling that meant she was on the hook for $100,000 in damages and $260,000 in attorney fees in a legal battle with one of the couples whose marriage she declined to certify. If ever there was a case of exceptional importance, the first individual in the Republic's history who was jailed for following her religious convictions regarding the historic definition of marriage, this should be it, the petition reads. Now, let's be very clear about some of the issues here. On one hand, I totally support her demand and request to be recognized as some of the First Amendment rights. Unfortunately, she works for Kentucky state government. Working at the county clerk's office means you don't get a say. Yes, you deserve a say by nature of being an individual, but when you are on the job working for the state, working for the government, you don't actually have your own personal say. You must go with what you are told to do by your boss because you're employed. That's part of it. And by being affiliated with the state, whatever you do reflects the state. And the state does not have the right to deny federal orders. If this was the guy who did the cake thing where he was sued for refusing to make a gay wedding cake, it would be a completely different story. But because you are a person who worked for the county clerk, so did this on behalf of the state, you don't get these same defenses. Sometimes rights are superseded by the rights of the institution. And I should also say that there is a bit of a mixed bag in the actual strength of the argument. One could very easily say, and I think I agree with this, that the Supreme Court was not justified in their 2015 ruling. To be entirely honest, it is not up to the Supreme Court to decide whether or not gay people are allowed to be married. That's not their job, it's the state's job. The federal court overreach. It's just like Roe v. Wade, where they massively overreach and overextended their power. Now, I'm not going to complain. As a bisexual man, I'm very glad gay marriage is a thing, but at the same time, I should acknowledge that this was an abuse of power that institutionalized gay marriage as a thing. There's also the fact that calling it gay marriage in of itself causes issues. You are actively alienating the gay community from many others, including religious communities. Now, I know this is going to sound a little unpopular, but hear me out. Ultimately, one of the biggest issues that are still happening right now is religious people are upset that marriage, which is a religious union, it is a union rooted in religious action, is being appropriated by the gay community, and in a way that is unholy and antithetical to Christianity. And I hear that complaint. So I don't understand why we demanded that gays must be allowed to marry when legal union would have done. We could have adopted other kinds of legal unions that one could express and experience that would have acted as the same purpose as gay marriage. Since marriage is just a legal union, a legal covenant, you could have that in ways that are not tied directly to religion by using other terms. You didn't have to call it gay marriage. You could have called it gay unionization, gay unity, gay whatever. You could have used a million different terms and just classified marriage as a form of union that is recognized by the church. And by just playing those semantic games, you could easily make a lot of changes that would have prevented a whole lot of the restrictions and pushback that we got for this decision. Also, to be clear, had we left it up to states, sure, some states would say you can't get a gay marriage here, but the state doesn't have the ability to deny a marriage issued in another state. They couldn't deny a gay marriage if you were offered the marriage in, say, another state. They'd have to follow through with it. They would have to recognize it. And of course, this is just filled with female rhetoric, as it's entirely an appeal to emotion. Look at me, who was wrongly jailed and wrongly fined. To be clear, what she's looking for is retribution for the charges put against her. And then inside of it is a Trojan horse begging for the repeal of gay marriage. And like I said, Davies, this is largely your fault that anybody would think this is even remotely conscionable. And worst of all, because the Supreme Court decided to cheat and take a shortcut, they've opened the gateway for there to be a debate. If they overturned Roe v. Wade for being unconstitutional for them to decide that, then, in all honesty, they're kind of opening the same door for gay marriage to be treated in the same way. And the real problem here is abuse of power. The Supreme Court abused its power back in 2015, and now we will be paying the price for that. Now, there's an important little side here, and some people mentioned that if the Republicans go ahead and do this, this will prevent a Republican president for the next probably 3 or 4 election cycles. This will be devastating for SCOTUS if we actually have the Supreme Court overturn gay marriage without some other kind of protection put in place immediately thereafter, such as the president making some kind of executive order protecting it. Because at least 2/3 of Americans support same-sex marriage, the appeal comes at a time when conservative groups in states are pushing to roll back protections from Obergefell. I don't even know what that is. In all honesty, I have no clue what that is. But this is a thing. We have a government that is known for abusing power. And then when we try to pull back the abuse of power, we're now labeled as abusing power. And we're creating a nice little dichotomy where half of the time we're looking to actually solve problems and we're still being labeled as fascists for weakening the government. And to be utterly clear, any kind of action that restricts gay marriage is not banning gay marriage. Stating we are overturning the ruling legalizing gay marriage is not a ban on gay marriage. What it is it is giving the right to decide back to the people, back to the states, or back to the federal government if the federal government decides to act on it. But it is taking it away from the Supreme Court, who did not have the right to rule on this. And I do just want to talk about and point out one key irony on all of this. Russel T. Davies says that the UK always copies America. Whatever America does is what the UK does. Except the UK seems to be leading the charge. First, they led the charge in restricting transitioning for minors, as they had several studies come out that showed that puberty blockers are not reversible. Cross-sex hormones are not reversible. And most importantly, transitioning does not reduce the rate of suicidal ideation. I did a pretty good breakdown of some trans stuff in another video. I'll link it up there. And then, of course, we have the censorship laws. The UK has gone full Orwellian totalitarianism by actively putting in laws that ban porn and then all of a sudden ban all right-wing or centrist news. Such as that case where a certain visitor decided to have some go at a 12-year-old girl, and then there were riots, so the UK censored all news about it and censored the riots. UK is now a complete and utterly totalitarian regime, and it needs to be addressed. But Russel T. Davies can't talk about that because the side pushing the censorship is the side he agrees with. For now. First, they came for the Nazis, and I said nothing because I was not a Nazi. And then they came for the conservatives, and I said nothing because I don't actually know what a conservative is. And then they came for the centrists, and I said nothing because I am not a centrist. And then they came for free speech, and I said nothing because free speech was used to push hate speech. And then they came for the non-Muslims, and I said nothing because pushing back against Muslims is Islamophobic, and that would be mean. And then they came for me, and I said nothing because there was no one to say anything for me. The leftist favorite poem is being enacted directly at them, and they aren't saying anything because they would rather win their pathetic little tiny incremental wars than actually stand up against any kind of real oppression or suppression. They'd rather fight against an invisible fascist than deal with actual government overreach and actual fascistic action. But they don't know the difference because all they care about is whether or not they get Pringles in a week. But that's pretty much all I've got. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this, and I will see you guys on the next one.